Good morning, everyone. This is the story of Project Dave. Why it's called Project Dave is frankly too dull to go into here, but the name was adopted by our friendly promotional robot. This is Dave. He's the Project Dave mascot. You can't move in our offices without seeing Dave somewhere. There's 6-foot-tall cardboard cutouts of him. We've got these strange vinyls peering in from the windows. We even had these little miniature kits that we got the staff to make themselves. And here's Dave on tour. Statue of Liberty, or might be a weeping angel now. Houses of Parliament, and Egypt. I'm not actually sure he went to any of those. But I've leapt ahead a little bit, because this is really a story about me, and how through my involvement with Project Dave, I'm now kind of speaking to you today. I'm going to be really honest with you. I didn't want to do this presentation. My arm was twisted into doing this. I mean, I'm a technical writer. Why would I want to speak in front of people? All I know is apostrophes, the difference between there, and there, how to make a CHM file, how to write release notes, how to write installation guides, make a few videos. You get the picture. What could I possibly have to talk about that would be of interest to anyone? I do know loads about Doctor Who, so we can cancel this whole thing now. We can have a discussion about the Vord, the Ood, Dalek Cybermen, the unit dating problem for those hardcore ones. But no. But technical writing and Doctor Who are very much my comfort zone, so somewhere in the middle there is my dream job. So anyway, the introduction. I'm Rob, and I'm a technical writer for Sage Software. I didn't plan to be a technical writer, it just happened. I left university, I had a degree in accountancy and computer science, and I took the job in computers because it sounded more fun and there were likely to be fewer exams. I was a project manager for a while as we acquired new businesses, but there came a point where, due to company takeovers, I found myself working for my third company without having to leave my desk. My career was just happening and dragging me along for the ride. I realised that I needed to stop going with the flow and to make some decisions of my own. And this should have been easy because I know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a writer. A proper writer, though, the next Stephen King. But Sage really weren't interested in sponsoring my venture into publishing. A technical writer would do. I didn't get any official training for this. I learned it all on the job, learned it from a colleague, read a few books. And for the past 6 years, it's been good. I've learned how to write release notes and how to write getting started guides and installation guides and user manuals. But times are changing, and I realise that this job isn't going to stay this way for much longer. It's going to change. So it's time to take matters into my own hands. Before I could do that, though, Project Dave happened. So I work in the accountants division in Sage, and we've been developing a new module for customers. This will plug into software that they've got really used to using over the years. And this module is called Sage Financial Statements, so I'll probably call it SFS. If I call it SPS, forget me, it's just SFS. We knew this was going to be difficult for our customers, it was going to be difficult for our support teams, it was going to be difficult for anyone in the business involved in this project. But why so difficult? Well, we knew this was going to affect 4,500 existing customers. The software worked very differently to how they were used to. And there were new concepts being introduced, so in this case, HMRC wanted to push out their IXBRL reporting language. Our support teams, they're fantastic, but they're not going to be able to deal with 4,500 customers starting to use a new product all at once. The competition, very quick to capitalise on any perceived weakness that we have. So in short, the product had to work, it had to be supportable, and it had to be easy to learn. And these are really big asks. So a project was started with the aim of rolling out this module with a minimum of fuss for our support team. But also we wanted to make sure that the users had the best possible experience. Now, I didn't ask to join this team. It was far worse than that. I was recommended. On one hand, I thought this was pretty good. Someone somewhere thought I had a range of skills and knowledge that would be really useful for this project. But that slightly more cynical side of me thought that an R&D manager was asked if they could spare anyone to join this project team, and they looked across the sea of stressed out developers and they looked over the wall of dictionaries and style guides and they found me, head hunched over my desk, checking for correct usage of apostrophes in someone else's work. But whatever, because this was the smartest thing they did. Luckily for the Project Dave team, I discovered I did actually have some skills that were useful. How have I stepped outside my comfort zone? I was nervous stepping into that first Project Dave meeting. There were about a dozen people from across the division in that room. Lots of them I knew to say hello to in the corridor. I'd never worked with any of them. I didn't know what they expected of me. And if I'm being truly honest, I was a bit scared of being lumbered with a whole load of extra work, and I still had my day job to do. And that was writing this help file for Sage Financial Statements. So this team, made up from all across the business, the plan was to meet weekly to start work on this rollout project. Now, our aim was to migrate 4,500 customers. Kay is the project manager for Project Dave, and as soon as she started mentioning migrating customers, alarm bells started ringing. Back when I was a project manager, Sage got busy acquiring lots of smaller companies, and with those new customers, we started to persuade them to use our preferred products going forward. And we called this process migration, internally and externally. It didn't go well. We upset quite a few people. So I suggested that maybe we didn't want to use the word migration in this context. And besides, it wasn't really that accurate because we didn't want customers to stop using their existing software. They needed to use that with this new module. So I said, well, let's talk about adoption. Some people in Project Dave probably thought I was being a complete idiot. Why did this matter? But I know that precision in language is important. And that's one of our skills, isn't it? Technical writers have a great grasp of language. There was some debate about this, but eventually we all agreed to use the word adoption. And here it is in the minutes. It's my first victory. If I hadn't used that attention for detail that I developed as a technical writer, Sage would right now be telling our customers that they needed to migrate to a new piece of software, and our competitors would have loved that. Oh. Trigger happy. On the face of it, we had loads of time to get our customers using the new module. So our first meeting was on the, there you go, trigger happy again. Our first meeting was on the 20th of June 2011, and HMRC had imposed a deadline of April 2013. So that's about 21 months. But obviously we needed this module to be ready, and that was due in April 2012. So now we're down to about 12 months. But also, we wanted to make sure that the majority of our customers were ready and using this new software by December 2012. So that was just to reduce the load on support. So now we're down to 9 months. So one of the first things the project needed was a comprehensive plan to work to. Now, I'm a great planner. Frankly, if I didn't plan the work I do across the multiple projects I'm working on, I'd be well and truly stuffed. I don't imagine I'm the only technical writer who feels this pull in many different directions. But technical writers are great at planning. So contributing to a business-wide plan like this really isn't that difficult. I just had to work out what to produce, then estimate how long that would take. And that's another skill we have. Developers think they have it tough when they have to estimate off the back of fuzzy requirements. Well, we have to anticipate how much help their unfinished software is going to need, and try to guess how hard it's going to be for us to get our heads around the solution so we can write about it. Planning and estimating are so vital to technical authors. Many of us are still working very close to release deadlines when the software is ready enough, stable enough for us to play with. And I never want to be in a position where a software release is delayed because the user assistance isn't ready. So planning and estimating are vital skills. Customers needed to understand a lot about the new module so they could start rolling it out in their businesses. For example, although we were trying to make it simple for them by giving them a new module which they could just plug into existing software, there was every chance that when we sent them their next installation disk, they would just assume it was a regular update and pay it no mind. So messaging was going to be vital. By the second week of Project Dave, I was seconded to another team, a sub-team, called the Need to Know team. It was our challenge to shape these initial messages, and this was really delicate work, because we needed to scare customers just enough that they started to do something. We didn't want them to call support, though. We didn't want them to start talking to our competitors. And as a team, we agreed that I would produce a document called the Getting Ready for Sage Financial Statements. Okay, suddenly I had some more work to do. But this document needed to do several things. It needed to explain what this release was, i.e. that they were going to get this new update as part of it. It needed to explain the context of the release, so although it was driven as a result of external requirements from HMRC, They were going to get a whole bunch of extra things. There was going to be new usability, lots of new functions. It needed to encourage them to start educating their staff about the release. It wasn't anything like the typical guides I would write. It was much more a hybrid marketing and technical document. And this represented a big effort across all the departments represented by Project Dave. So we had product managers, we had sales, marketing, training, R&D. They're all contributing to this guide, and it was the start of some pretty decent collaboration. And I used my language skills to shape this into something simple enough that customers could understand. One of the biggest contributions I've had to this project was the Learning Centre. Our help is, somewhat shamefully, still delivered in CHM files, so they're installed on each workstation locally. This means, of course, that when we want to update our help, we have to wait for the next software release to go out. In this sense, it feels that we're very much behind the curve. But in my fantasy world, I imagine this website where the user goes to, and they'll find knowledge-based articles, FAQs, training videos, white papers, and this information would be a merging of information from all across the division. It would be one great big user assistance mashup. It's not an original idea. It might not be a good idea. It's a bit of a fantasy, though, at the moment for us. I'm a realist. I know that this is going to cost money. It's also going to cost our developers a lot of time, which they don't have. So I put forward a simpler plan. I didn't really have any idea of how it was going to happen. But once I suggested it in the Project Dave team, the idea caught steam. Our marketing team told me how it could be done at very little expense using some existing websites we already had. So all I really needed to do was to produce some videos and write some content for the website. So what we have now, it's not this fancy website just yet. It doesn't replace our CHM files, but it's a pretty decent first stab at getting some of our user assistance online. He even gave it a name. Rob's Amazing Learning Portal. But our usability guru felt that portal sounded a little bit old hat, so this became the Learning Centre. Ralph was a blessing for the Project Dave team because I was able to produce some videos in time for the beta of this software. That was by Christmas 2011, and Ralph was live. The team actually had something tangible to point the rest of the business at as well. So although it was made for customers, it was a great way to get the rest of the business learning about this new project. So the trainers could look at it and support could look at it and get familiar with it before it was properly rolled out. Here's just a quick look at the Learning Centre. Not live, unfortunately, but we have a number of videos here, which I managed to put together. If I was to scroll down there, we'd find lots of PDF guides. But at least it was somewhere we could point customers to and say, here's some up-to-date information, and it gave us a little bit more flexibility. It's going to be tricky to get all of our customers using the new software in the timescales we'd like. Even when they have it and install it, they can still use the old software as well. For each of their clients, they're given a choice as to which software to use. And this is quite a lot of information to take on. It's quite tricky. We can't ring all of our customers and explain this to them. We know that emails are only partially effective. And we know that not everyone is going to take the time to read my fantastic Getting Ready guide. So we've planned a series of roadshow events. Should have put that on silent, sorry. Planned a series of roadshow events. So these are from some that we held last year on a similar topic. We want to meet our customers face to face and explain all of this to them. Now, I've spent a long time in R&D. I'm quite green to some of the other areas of the business. But now I'm quite happy to suggest things in the Project Dave meetings. When we started planning the roadshows, snags would come up. How do we make sure we get all of our customers to an event in the month that they want to start using SFS? This became a logistical nightmare. And I said, well, this sounds like loads of work. Why don't we just tell customers which one they're going to and give them one chance to change it? We were worried about if we printed out guides and give to attendees at the events, how do we prevent wastage? And I said, well, why don't we stick a recycling box by the exit like cinemas do for their 3D glasses? I know these aren't great ideas. They might not even be good ideas, but it shows that I didn't need to have any experience in roadshow planning to be able to make these suggestions and contribute. What it needed was common sense and being able to make connections to other problems that already have solutions. So it's important to get past that fear of making suggestions that relate to your specific role. It really does free you. I work in the best department in Sage, and I can say that without working in any other department. R&D is the core of our business. Without a product to sell, market or support, the rest of the business are just sat twiddling their thumbs. For the first 6 months of Project Dave, I was the only person from R&D attending, so I had a responsibility to represent R&D and to share my knowledge with that team. Many of them had never really had any hands-on experience with the product at all. So helping others understand new products really isn't outside the comfort zone, but having someone with access to R&D on a project team like this has certainly been valuable. As technical writers, we're so close to our products that we're in a great position to be user advocates. When I write a cumbersome procedure topic, there's a very small chance it's because I'm having an off day, and slightly more chance the developers have let slip their user focus for whatever reason. But as technical writers, this is where we can help. We write help topics for our users. We know exactly who they are and how they use the software. Isn't the first rule of writing any material to know your audience? For over 6 years as a technical writer, I haven't spoken to a single customer. That's 0% interaction. And this isn't good enough. I should be making a reasonable effort to contact our customers, forget what the developers tell me about how our customers use the software, and go out and actually speak to them. So an opportunity came along to get involved in usability testing, and I took it. The first session was done remotely. The second session was done at the user's premises. But on both of these, I got to watch the user perform real-life tasks, and I thought this was pretty eye-opening. Some of the things that get developed with the best will in the world can be incredibly frustrating for customers, but this is something we see all the time when we're writing help topics. We know when a process is clunky and at risk of confusing the customer, but how often do we speak out about it? Often by the time we come to write the material, it's too late for developers to change things, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be involved much earlier before things are set in stone. During a usability session, one of our customers noticed there were a few typos in one of the reports. Now, when it comes to prioritizing bugs for developers to fix, I imagine typos fall pretty low down the list. But is that the right attitude? His comments to us were, if they can't be bothered to spell right, what else is wrong with the software? In short, it totally dented his confidence in the product, and from that moment on, any time there was any kind of problem, he was really less forgiving. I'm not suggesting we have to proofread everything our developers do, but it's a good example of how a skill that we largely take for granted has a demonstrable impact on the user. I've worked a lot with the team on external communications to customers, so we'd have group discussions about what it was we needed to tell customers, how we were going to do that, and what language we were going to use. And I've learned loads from doing this. I'm not going to jump ship into a career in marketing, but our marketing team have a really great grasp of language. They really take time to make sure it's right. They're also really receptive to feedback. We're very much alike. So some of the work I've been involved with includes some inserts that had to go inside the DVDs. This was just to explain some potentially frustrating information for customers, some emails persuading customers along to roadshows, and also some emails explaining what this new module is going to mean to them. But the latest piece of work was to review a script that our managing director was going to use in a webcast to the whole customer base. It was crucial to get the tone of this right, and make it seem as natural as possible. So one of the things I often do with my work is to read it aloud. So the ear picks up so many more things with language that the eye just can't spot. And a script for a webcast is a perfect thing to read aloud. I was quite ruthless with this, aiming to take out any jargon I could find and just to simplify the whole piece. And the end result was a great example of plain English. Of course, it wasn't just me that was going to be writing some user assistance for this new SFS module. So all of these areas are represented, and all are going to be responsible for some content. I've seen work from some of these areas before, and sometimes when I review their work, I find stuff that other people just miss. In short, technical writers are great at reviewing. To entice our customers to one of the roadshows, and to show them a flavour of some of the things that were coming their way, some webinars were written. So customers would get an email inviting them along, they'd go to the website, they'd choose the date, time. When that time came, they'd sit down, they'd watch the presentation, and on the first slide of this presentation, there'd be a typo. And again, it's back to first impressions, and typos are really, really bad first impressions. For one particular course, I got to review the entire training manual that we were going to print out for these roadshows. Overall, this was a great piece of work. It covered loads of functionality, gave customers a real taste for what was going to happen. But there were issues with it. I was the fourth person to look at this piece of work, so that's at least 3 other people have looked at it. They've given some feedback, changes have been made, new drafts have been written. So why, when I was reviewing, did I find missing words and typos and misunderstandings in how the program worked? There were out-of-date screenshots, text alignment issues, and different fonts used for no real reason. I suspect these things slip through for the following reasons, though. Just a lack of time. People are busy, they don't know how long reviews should take. They can't find enough time to give a piece of text a thorough review. People are too polite. I think the reviewers recognise that writers have spent a lot of time putting this work together. They don't want to upset them and dishearten them by getting the red pen out. But this isn't a problem I have. Too many people rely on spell checkers. If words aren't underlined, that means there's no errors. Lack of technique. Reviewing well is a skill, so I'll read out aloud passages, I might read backwards up the page, I might print stuff out, all in an attempt to find problems. And some people don't appreciate the importance of presentation, so presenting information in the right way, with a solid grasp of headings and consistent alignment and good use of white space can all make a big difference for customers. So I'm not saying that the reviews were poor because the reviewers didn't care. These are really smart people. It's just that reviewing isn't necessarily one of their strengths. So how can this be made better? Well, stepping out of the comfort zone, I arranged some meetings with the user assistance writers in our division. So that's our trainers and support people. And off the back of it, we are going to address some of these issues. But beyond reviewing, it is a chance to start to collaborate and share best practice. I wouldn't have been able to contribute to any of these things without stepping out of my comfort zone. I used to think that I was of most use to the business in coming in, sitting down at my desk, head down, writing the help files, doing them well, but that was about it. But I took a risk, agreed to join a project away from R&D, and I've learned and achieved a lot. Here's some of the things I've worked on then. External messages for customers, created a learning centre, edited a script for the managing director, planned roadshows, attended usability sessions, met customers, shaped customer webinars, and helped bring together that user assistance triangle thingy. So with all this going on, what am I going to focus on next? Well, Project Dave is going to carry on throughout this year, throughout most of next year, so I'll be working with them. Also, there are going to be some other things happening that will take me away from writing help files. I mentioned we're going to be holding roadshows as part of this new module's rollout, so I'm going to go to at least one of these. It's going to be a great way to get to meet customers, find out what they think about user assistance, find out how they like to use the Learning Centre, what we could provide to them. But I also know that we're going to need people at these events who can demonstrate the product. And I've been involved with this project for a few years. So I think I've had enough exposure to make me a pretty decent software demonstrator. That's definitely out of my comfort zone. I mentioned getting together with other user assistance writers to start collaborating. And we started meeting now. So most recently, I've sat down with the support team. We've gone through some of their knowledge base articles and looked at that comparing to our Sage Tone of Voice and Style Guides and really given them some coaching on that. And this has been really well received because these support guys don't often get training. They don't often get time off the phones to do this kind of thing. So we're going to be focusing on videos next. We've still got lots of different groups of people making videos to different standards, different tools, different approaches. So the feedback from these meetings has been really encouraging. I don't know how to break this to you, but this is the third time I've had to do this presentation now. When I first started working on this, presenting was my worst nightmare. Now, though, I can see that I've learned loads from doing this, honestly. I can't begin to explain how far this is out of my comfort zone. My line manager, if you're really interested, that's him there, hiding. He's a usability specialist in R&D, so a couple of years ago, he suggested we teach our R&D staff about the Sage Tone of Voice and how that applies to our user interfaces in the product. So we came up with this great workshop format. He invited me to present it along with him because he knows that language is a crucial part of the Sage Tone of Voice. So we talk about how the messaging and the software is so important to users and what we can do to make this better. We've already had 4 sessions this year. We expect to have some more with the aim to get everyone in the R&D department through these sessions. I've done one of these on my own, and it was a lot of fun. The attendees listened and seemed to get a lot out of the session, and beyond belief, they genuinely gave the impression they were listening to what I had to say. We've also got a learning and development team at Sage, and they're focused on helping our people develop their skills and knowledge. So they've recently put together this great website with a list of resources and support material that our staff can use to learn from. But they've also been asking for volunteers to produce new material. So I said, yes, well, I'll help do some of that. That sounds like that's part of my skill set. So moving on a little bit. What do our employers want? So what's the point of talking about all of that? Nice fish out of water story, it's a little bit Disney. It hardly matters to you. But what I'm trying to illustrate was how as technical writers, we already have lots of skills that employers want. But only by stepping outside of our comfort zones can we show our employers our potential to add value to the business in other ways. Well, what do our employers want anyway? They took us on to do a job of writing user assistance. Isn't that enough? Well, maybe. But if it were my business, I'd want to know what my staff were capable of and how they could help support the rest of my people. Employers want their businesses to grow and add value. Who here is confident that their job isn't going to change in the next 20 years? Or the next 10 years or 5 years? How many help files do you see with the apps on your smartphone? How many websites now have help driven by the users? So I'm not confident that I'm going to be doing this in 5 years' time, or even a couple of years. So I want to make sure that when my employer looks at me, he sees me not just as a technical writer, but as someone with a range of skills and knowledge that can be used to make his business valuable. Okay, so our learning and development team, they've helped us recently look at what kind of skills we have and what our training requirements are. And to do this, we've looked at each one of our job roles in the division, and we've listed out all of the skills and knowledge we'd expect for someone in that role. And this is what they came up with for skills for a technical writer, or a sample of them. So, writing help content, editing, presenting, training, mentoring, coaching, listening, organisation. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? I'd be quite happy to have that on my CV. On top of this skills list, we can add all of the knowledge that we've acquired in our roles. And then there's the knowledge of the wider functional areas in your business. So knowing what makes your business work is going to be crucial in persuading your employer that you know how to add value. It all looks pretty strong. But have you ever told your boss you possess these skills? When I look through that list, I know that I'm not fully competent in all of those areas. But knowing what your current strengths and weaknesses are is a crucial first step in knowing where to focus your energies. So I went through one of these spreadsheets, went through each one of these skills, said whether I could do it or not. And once through that spreadsheet, I had a good idea of the areas that I was quite good at and the areas where I needed to focus on. And one of those areas was presenting. I'm not a confident presenter, and I've avoided situations where I've had to present in front of people before. But since I'm doing this presentation now, it's probably worth elaborating on. I absolutely hate presenting. Detest it. Sorry. Or rather hated. But I'm a big fan of Richard Carlson's books. So he's the guy that wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. If you haven't read it, it's well worth a read. Very little, very good. But one of his points was to give up your fear of talking to groups. If you're frightened of speaking to groups even a little bit, you may avoid doing things that could greatly benefit your career, give you a promotion or more responsibility or an advancement of some kind. And this really did resonate with me. So when the opportunity to present came about, I said yes, eventually. To help me improve my presenting skills, well, I got hold of a couple of books on my Kindle, read through those, went through some exercises, sat down with my line manager, we worked out what kind of structure we might want to do for this talk. Originally he was going to present with me, but hoofed him off. Made the effort to speak up more in meetings and scheduled some time in one of the R&D meetings so I could get used to speaking in front of a group of people. So the point is I identified a skill that I was weak at and focused on it to improve it. I believe that we owe it to ourselves to shout about our skills and show our employers that we can do more for them than write the technical manual. We're too quick to label ourselves and get trapped in our roles. I'm a technical writer, so I write the help files. I'm a technical writer, so I write the release notes. But it doesn't have to be this way. At the start of this presentation, I claimed I was ready to do something about my career. Project Dave was a lucky opportunity for me. Without that, maybe I'd still be keeping my head down and doing what was asked of me. But I'm not going to limit myself by working within the expectations of a job label. I'm not a technical writer. I'm not even a technical communicator. I'm Rob, and I work for Sage. Hopefully this presentation has sparked some ideas in you. Where do you see yourself adding value? Is there a support team you can work more closely with to share knowledge and best practice? Can you help train others in some of your skills? Can you help support write better articles? Can you help your boss to write punchier emails that actually get read? Does your company have anything like our learning and development team? If it doesn't, is that something you could do as a side project? If you work for yourself, should you start offering more services? How about training in plain English? Whatever your situation, there are opportunities. Just don't live under the constraints of the labels that you give yourself. It's natural to feel anxious about leaving your comfort zone. Maybe you don't know how your boss will act if you start reaching into new areas. Will it look like you don't have enough work to do? Or maybe that you're unhappy in your role? It might seem like a risk, but what's the alternative? I'd sooner take charge of my career and demonstrate these skills I have than wait and hope for someone else to notice them. Perhaps mixing up your work a little with something else will show you what lies elsewhere. Or it might reinforce your belief that you're truly doing what you're happiest doing. Maybe technical writing is your passion. But if you don't try anything else, how will you really know for sure? It can feel threatening when others get involved in user assistance. I hated it when the support team started writing knowledge-based articles. I didn't like it when the trainers started making videos. I wanted to be the user assistance expert who made everything. But what a load of crap. For starters, I just don't have the time. But more importantly, how arrogant would I be to assume that I was the best skilled person to do all of this material? Or that I wouldn't learn anything at all from these people? Part of being successful in an organisation must come from your ability to work with others. I find that making myself available as a resource for these other teams has strengthened my relationships with them. And yes, part of their jobs is going to be to write some user assistance, but that doesn't mean we're in competition. They've got skills and knowledge that I don't, and I've got skills and knowledge that they don't. In my experience, they've welcomed my involvement in the user assistance that they've worked on. So forget being threatened by others entering your space. You should welcome it. Hopefully by now you'll agree that technical writers have more skills than we credit ourselves with, and we can use these to help our businesses in ways other than writing technical manuals. But who should you shout to? Well, firstly, it wouldn't hurt to remind yourself about how brilliant you all are. And after that, well, if you're self-employed, it's very much up to you to market your services and be imaginative about how you can help your clients. If you work for someone else, you could do a lot worse than speaking to your line manager, or start volunteering for initiatives as they come up, or start seeking out new opportunities and start creating your own initiatives. But you just need to demonstrate a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. Finally, in conclusion, I'd like to say this. You've heard how I stepped out of my comfort zone and learned how much I can offer my company. And that wasn't easy. It would have been easier to continue working in my own little silo. But our industry is changing and we all need to learn to big ourselves up. We can't afford to hide behind the labels we give ourselves. We have skills, and if we need to learn more, we can do that too. So do yourselves a favour, shout about your skills, get your employees to recognise that you can offer them so much more than a technical manual. Thank you.
We've got a few minutes left. If you've got any questions for Rob, please raise your hand.
Oh, we've run out of time? Excellent.
How do
you create your videos?
Well, there's lots of ways in our place. Depending on which office you're in, you might be using Camtasia. We've used Jing. I've personally used Madcap Mimic. We're now using Camtasia again. Some people are using Captivate. And the point there is that we've got so many people using different tools that we can't even share knowledge about the best way to do it. Anything else? Hello.
So you don't like doing presentations?
No, hate them.
How do you feel when this one is over?
Very relieved. You know, quite happy, I'd say.
Do you get a buzz out of it then?
No.
Sorry.
Thanks for the easy question, though. Thank you. Okay, so I'll be around, wandering, hiding behind things. If you want to ask anything else, Just please remember, though, that we need to recognise our skills and be prepared to shout about them. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you also to fill in a